Welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the worst things that can happen to you on the farm is getting hail. When your crop gets hailed out, it's no fun. But we want to talk today about evaluating that stand and what you can do after the hail event has happened.
All right, I want to look at the good acres though too, Brandon. When we're out in some of these cornfields, there's a lot of weeds coming and control is just not there yet. So you may be interested in some later season weed control options. We'll talk about them today.
As always, we have a Weed of the Week coming up later in the show and Iron Talk as well. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference. Because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about another handy app you can use on your phone or your iPad if you want to. The Soybean Diseases App from Ag PhD. We developed this just a couple of years ago in conjunction with the American Phytopathological Society.
It's a really handy app, Brian. There's so many different diseases that could pop up in your fields. When you look at, no matter where you're farming, just look at what the universities have done in your area for disease work, and there's probably a dozen different diseases that are very common for your area with soybeans. But can you distinguish between them? I talk to farmers all the time and say, well, hey, I know this weed and this weed and this weed and this weed. Yeah, that's great, but how about diseases? Well, I don't know. The plant has a disease. No, you have to know what it is so you can protect yourself, because this year, for example, we had a wet spring across much of the growing area where soybeans were going in. So soybeans are getting put into some muddy, wet ground, cold ground, and there are a lot of things like Pythium, Rhizoctonia, Fusarium that are popping up on plants just all throughout fields. And it may be one plant here and there, it may be patches out in fields. You've got to figure out what it is so you can put a stop to those problems. You don't want them to be happening to your soybeans for the next 20 years. You want to take care of it as soon as you can.
And then there are a lot of leaf diseases that can come on as the season progresses as well. And it's important to know whether those diseases are bacterial or fungal. And there are ways to figure those things out. So you can use this app for a number of things, but we just really encourage you to download that app and check that out. Because when I walk through soybean fields on a regular basis, I'm finding diseases all the time. And yes, it might not be very widespread, but the whole thing is with fungicides, it's important to control the disease before it is across the entire field. You want to identify it just in little spots, spray the fungicide, and stop it right there.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Just looking at pictures is very helpful for me. I can pull up the app, I can look through the pictures and just see, hey, what does this one look like? And oftentimes there's some helpful tips there about, hey, you're going to find this in the middle of the stem if you split the stems open, or you need to dig this up and actually inspect the roots and look at what color they are, or look for fungal growth on the roots, those kinds of things. Now, this is in no way a substitute for sending plants in to a university or a lab, but it's a great way to get a head start on it and say, oh, here's the symptoms, here's what it looks like. I really suspect it's this disease or this one. Could you help me determine that?
Well, the problem with sending something in to a plant pathologist is it might take a few days or even a week to get the answer back. Well, in the meantime, that disease could spread, and now you lost the opportunity to protect your yield.
Well, there are a lot of handy tools out there on the farm. One that I really like to have, though, is the Ag PhD Soybean Diseases App. You can download it for free. It's free to use, and there's some great information for you.
You can also check out the Ag PhD Field Guide, where we have a lot of different weeds on there and our best ways to control those weeds. One of the weeds we're going to talk about later in the show, though, is our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us, because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Increase your productivity with Hypro's dual React control system. The dual nozzle body design allows you to drive at the speed you want while maintaining the rate and droplet size you need. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
As a farmer, one of the things I fear every summer is hail. When we have a hail issue, this is just no fun because you've done all the work of planting, a lot of times spraying, and you go, oh boy, my crop's starting to look pretty good. And then in one fell swoop, you have a bunch of leaves on the ground, sometimes stems, sometimes full plants. So today we want to talk just a little bit about how much damage can be done before you're actually losing any yield, and what do you do after you have hail.
Let's start with corn, and let's talk about the least of our problems, leaf loss. Let's not even talk about stand loss yet. Let's just assume every plant is okay, but you lost a bunch of leaf area. Now, it looks terrible. I've driven by so many fields, and we've had fields on our farm too that were all stripped up from hail that had come down, and you think, man, I've lost half my leaf area. I must have lost half my yield potential. But that's just not the case. When you look at the charts for hail, the percent area leaf destroyed, if you're not over 55% lost, you're not even going to get to a 30% yield loss. And in most cases, you're going to be looking at a 10% yield loss or less. Now, I realize we don't want to have to look at fields like that. We'd much rather say, nope, it's a total loss, chop whatever's left or disc it under or something because it looks terrible. But the fact is you're going to get some yield out there. It just depends on what stage of growth you're at. The worst timing to get the hail, of course, is right around tassel when we're trying to pollinate that ear. If we're in that condition, yeah, that's where you could really have some problems. Once that ear is pollinated, losing leaf area is not as bad as you would think. It's still not good, but at least you're not going to be losing half your crop or more.
About 20 years ago, Darren and I were at this training event at Iowa State University in Ames. And one of the things I noticed as we were walking up is they had a machine that was shooting ice at plants. And I thought, what in the world are these guys doing? Well, it was a hail simulator, and they did this many years in a row. So then all the insurance companies, farmers out there, just everybody in the industry has good data to work with. So they would spray that hail at all different levels, at all different stages of corn and soybeans. And it's shocking to me, like what Darren just said, how you can have a tremendous amount of leaf area gone and there's very little yield that's actually been lost, and that's been proven many times out. It's the same thing with soybeans. When I look at the charts on soybeans, you can lose 50% of the leaf area and only about 10% of the yield is lost. That's not much, because when you walk out to the field that next morning after hail, you go, oh no, we're doomed here. We're going to lose all our yield, and you only lost 10%, and in many cases even less than that. In terms of the number of nodes that are cut off, it's almost the same thing with soybeans. If you're in the vegetative stages, you can lose half the nodes and you only have 10% yield loss. If you lose half the nodes in the reproductive stages, it gets a little bit worse. It might be 20 or 30% yield loss, but still, it's not an all-out disaster.
I know there's a lot of data on these charts. If you want to look them up yourself online, you can see the charts and pick your specific numbers you want to use. Just search for hail charts and Iowa State University or University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and you'll find the charts we're talking about.
All right, there are a few other things that we want to talk about here. Fungicide, when should you replant, stalk quality, and weed control.
All right, let me start with stalk quality, because let's say you get some hail, that's bad enough. Now you have to start splitting open some stalks and seeing what's going on. And if you've got deep bruising in the lower parts of the stem below the ear, you're going to have some lodging late in the season and you're going to have some issues, and that's something that you need to watch. On soybeans, what I do, here's my little trick. I'll go out in soybean fields and just maybe a few inches up off the ground, I'll just run my arm across those soybean plants just down the row, and I'll see how many snap off and how many just bend over and pop right back up. And that gives me a good idea about soybean bruising. On corn, you just have to split some stalks open and take a look. If you've got deep bruises, it could be a bad thing later in the season.
Well, one of the ways that you can prevent further damage is spray a fungicide. The problem with fungicides is they don't stop bacteria. When you have hail hit your plants, usually bacteria enters in, so you have more bacterial diseases. You'll also see more fungal diseases too, but the challenge with spraying a fungicide is you're not always going to gain yield. The plant will look better. We've done it on our own farm where, I would swear to you, absolutely we're going to gain yield, because where we sprayed fungicide, the plants looked so much better. But sometimes we gain yield, sometimes we don't. So it's hard for me to tell you absolutely spray a fungicide, but honestly on our farm, after hail, we are going to spray fungicide.
Another thing, Brian, is weed control. If you've lost your crop canopy, we just take that for granted in agriculture, how big a deal having crop canopy is to holding down late season weed pressure. You're going to have more weeds, and chances are there aren't going to be many options that are going to be labeled for you, if any, if that hail hits late enough in the season.
The last thing is, should you replant or not? And that's something you need to work through with your agronomist, with your insurance adjuster. I don't know what to tell you unless I have specific data, and the most important thing I'm looking for is, when can I replant? If I can replant in early June, that's whole different than late June, and it's absolutely different than early July. So just look at, in your area, how much yield do you usually lose by planting late? The last thing that I'll throw out along with that is, let's say you are hailed out and you go, well, I'm just not going to replant, it's too late. I would still encourage you to put a cover crop in, put a cover crop blend in. That way you will have the best overall soil life and soil health going into next year, so you can maximize next year's yield.
Hail is a bad thing, there's no question about it. Get some other help, get some other people to give you some advice as well, so you don't have all the emotion involved in it. And then look at the charts to see exactly what the data shows as to what kind of impact it's going to have on your yield. Now, in terms of impact on our weed of the week, we know this one's going to make it through hail and it's going to come back. You're going to have to get it under control. So we'll show you how coming up later in the show.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, You're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Our topic here is late corn herbicide spraying. And right before the show, Darren and I were talking and he goes, well, what is late corn herbicide spraying? And I said, all depends. I consider V5 late. Other guys are going to consider V8 late. And then we're going to get a few guys that they're going to say, boy, my corn's tasseling and I see some weeds out there. So we're going to talk about all those things today.
First of all, why V5, V6? Right in that timing, we've got our growing point coming up out of the ground. So now our growing point is up and above the ground, and we've got to be more cautious with our plant. Some will say, Brian, we've even got to be more cautious early because ear shoots are going to start to initiate and all those things are going to start happening inside the plant. Agree. And there are farmers I know that won't spray after V3 because they just don't want to put stress on the crop. So I do want to think about it that way. I don't want to think about it, well, what does the label allow? Just because a label may say V8, for example, doesn't mean that's the best time to get the most yield and most profit for you. We suggest spraying as early as you can. Do everything you can to get an early crop canopy so you don't have late season problems. But here we are, we're getting on in the season. Let's talk about our late options.
All right, the first thing I don't want you to use is dicamba. Well, I'll throw out 2,4-D too, but I think most everybody quit using 2,4-D 20 years ago on corn because they realized that wasn't safe. Well, straight dicamba isn't very safe past V3 either. I realize the label says up to V5, but we really want that done by V3 because, like Darren said, ear shoots are initiated there. So with dicamba, you may have Roundup resistant weeds, or maybe you're raising conventional corn again and you want to use some dicamba. Just don't spray it after V3 and especially after V5.
All right, Brian, I'll take an easy one, and one that you really want to watch out for on late applications is atrazine. There are a lot of premixes now that contain atrazine, but there are also some guys that are mixing atrazine in separate with a lot of different products out there. Atrazine's safe to your crop. It's not going to hurt your corn, but you are limited on the label to 12-inch tall corn. So if you're pushing that window, even if you're only at V5 or V6, so you say, well, it's not really very late, if you're at 12 inches of growth already, the atrazine use has to stop.
Darren mentioned premixes. There are a lot of premixes now that contain one of the Group 15s, whether it's Outlook, Harness, Surpass, Dual, Zidua. Those products need to be sprayed. Just look at the label, but in most cases, it's up to 11-inch tall corn.
Speaking of chemical families, Brian, one that's become very popular has been the HPPD family because Callisto went off patent. So now you can buy mesotrione for really a low price, maybe only a few bucks. And once you get something that's cheap, I get it. People just want to keep using it. And fortunately, most of the HPPDs are pretty safe to the crop. So they've got some pretty generous labels where you can use them a little bit later in the season. You're going to have to look at each product individually to see what the label restrictions are. Here's the point though. Just because you can spray something on taller corn, it doesn't, again, make that the best agronomic recommendation. But if you get in that window where you say, hey, I'm past V5 and I really don't want to use dicamba anymore, the HPPDs are probably the most popular choice you're going to have. Now, when it comes to weed control with those HPPDs, they're not great on perennial weeds. They're not great on the viney type of weeds either. So if you've got a weed that tends to vine out, in general, the HPPDs are a little bit weaker on those. But when we look at cocklebur, sunflower, velvet leaf, even a lot of the Roundup resistant weeds like ragweed and pigweeds, if you get them small, in most cases, HPPDs are going to work just fine. Just be cautious. There are some weeds beginning to be resistant to this class of chemistry. If you've got that happening in your area, or if you just want to make sure it doesn't happen to you, try and find another mode of action that you could mix in too.
All right, I've got 3 last things. First, Bucktrol is actually labeled up to 36-inch tall corn. The problem is there isn't even a name brand Bucktrol anymore. There's just generic bromoxynil out there. Brox is one of the products we talk about quite often. The challenge when corn gets really big, though, is you're probably going to need drop nozzles to get down and get coverage. That brings me to point number 2. If you want to spray after tassel, you can do that. There are some products labeled like 2,4-D, for example. I don't love that option. You're not going to save yield at all. It's just the question of, did you stop the weed from going to seed? At that point, on our farm, I'd probably just give up. But if you want to do it, you can go out and spray drop nozzles after brown silk. The final thing that I wanted to mention is there are some safeners. So there are products like dicamba that we mentioned earlier, and you say, well, I can only spray dicamba safely, really safely, up to V2, maybe V3, at the most V5. You could buy Diflex, it's got a safener in there. I still don't recommend spraying late, in part because of drift concerns. Same kind of thing with Status. Status has some dicamba in there and it's got a safener, but I don't trust that safener when the corn gets really big, and I worry about drift as well. All right, we've talked about a lot of different corn herbicides here. We just encourage you get good weed control, especially early in the season on your farm. That's where you get the best yield. And speaking of getting the best yield, you'll definitely want to control our weed of the week. We'll talk about how to stop it on your farm coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our weed of the week is Jimson weed.
Oh, Brian, I thought it was thornapple or moonflower or Jamestown
All
weed.
the same thing.
There's so many different names for this one, but here's the big thing. Why are there so many names? People had to have a name for this weed because it's poisonous. So you don't want this one to be out in your field. Plus, it's highly competitive with your crops. So we've got a lot of reasons to get Jimson weed under control, and we don't want to wait till it's big and all over your field.
All right, let's talk first about soybeans. I would strongly encourage you use the 3-Pre program we talk about all the time, getting Authority out there and Metribuzin. Both of those things are really good. Post-emerge, you've got a lot of options. Roundup's pretty good, dicamba, 2,4-D, Liberty, depending on the trait that you've got, obviously. Also, many of the ALS herbicides are pretty good, like Pursuit and Raptor, and Flexstar's not too bad either.
In corn, we've had good luck with Verdict down. Sharpen does a nice job burning it down if you're in reduced till. Otherwise, I like Triple Flex and Sure Start. They both work well and are a little bit cheaper, so many guys choose those options. Post-emerge, just about all the broadleaf products for corn have pretty good activity. I really prefer any of the HPPDs and Status as my top choices.
Then you go to wheat. Put Sharpen down. That'll get most of your Jimson weed under control. If it doesn't, you can always follow Post-emerge with Wide Match. If you want, you can throw in a little bit of Affinity as well.
That's all the time we have for this tough, poisonous weed, Jimson weed. But stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a breakthrough seed treatment technology controls nematodes when they attack. Now offering NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference. Because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us.
Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive.
Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Crazy year 2019 has been. Cornfields have so many different situations going on right now, but one thing they all have in common is a need for nitrogen. In today's Iron Talk, we'll discuss determining how much your corn is calling for and how to meet that need. In terms of nitrogen management, a good place to start is with an online tool to utilize high-frequency satellite data, weather data, crop modeling, and more to estimate how much nitrogen you may need and when to apply it. In addition to that, we also like to ground truth the data, meaning we pull pre-side dress nitrate tests at a 12 to 24-inch depth a week or so ahead of our anticipated side dress applications. Now, if we need more N, the question is how to apply it. There are more methods of application than we have time to discuss, but here are two that we've tried recently. First, let's discuss injection. We've got a Hagie sprayer and utilize the nitrogen toolbar attachment to side dress. The benefit is to put the nitrogen in the ground as opposed to leaving it on top. The downside is potentially cutting some roots and that the nitrogen isn't exactly right next to the row. The opposite is our second method, surface placement. And you sure can see the appeal of the wide drop system with no root pruning and close placement of the nitrogen to the corn plant. In situations where you don't get much rain, the moisture from the dew is funneled down to the base of the corn plant, effectively moving the nitrogen into the soil. Where it's easy to run into problems, especially with these two systems, is in rolling terrain with terraces and point rows. It's tough to stay perfectly in between the rows. So what's the best way to side dress? It really depends on your field terrain, the rate of nitrogen you want to apply, how quickly you'll get some rain, and what you have available for equipment and nitrogen sources as to what you can utilize on your farm. Now, if you're getting the nitrogen into the plants without losing it, and you're doing it without hurting very many corn plants in each field, you found a system that works well for you. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we'd encourage you to check out the Ag PhD Insider magazine. You can just go to agphdinsider.com to learn more.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.